As is seen in this mechanism, in the latter group, that is, in dreams connected to the influences coming from above, there are purposeful devices addressing rather the consciousness. These aim to teach man certain things. These dreams are shown for various reasons, such as revealing some stages of future events that need to be known for essential reasons, giving warnings in the face of some situations, or delivering intuitions of some necessary knowledge. Nonetheless, there are no stirrings in the universe that can be outside the control and directive of the unitary. Starting from a single motion to all motions of universe, every stirring is subject to the directives of the unitary. Therefore, upon seeing that we use terms like random, unconnected for the dream coming from below, it should not be thought that we mean by this that they are futile and unnecessary. There is no motion or occurrence in universe that is unnecessary, meaningless, or futile. Our usage of the terms above for the dreams coming from below is relative to the dreams which are connected to the influences coming from higher consciousness. They, as well, have their own particular ways of execution. They, as well, occur in another devised and calculated way. Thusly, as they are pondered upon, many things are learned and gained. So, in the dreams seen by the influences coming from above, materials in the unconscious are used as images. In the ones coming from the surroundings, images are constituted by the materials taken from the subconscious. Nonetheless, if the being wanting to show the dream sees it necessary to put into effect its purpose, it utilizes not only knowledge pertaining to this world life in the unconscious, but also some knowledge from the subconscious, belonging to past lives. Naturally, images taken from the subconscious in this way are rather devised and proper, not like the flimsy images taken from the influences coming from surroundings. After giving this knowledge, explaining the mechanism of mediumship becomes easier. Mediumship occurs through influencing, that is, exchanges of vibrations. So, it is necessary for the vibrations coming from the beings to be fitting to the nature of mediums. It is natural that in each world existing in the universe, matter conditions are different. The embodied are always states of formations, in grades of the matter conditions of the sphere they exist on. And each of them has their own particular magnetic fields. Because of this, since the incoming vibrations are obliged to find the matter forms which are closest to each state and condition, it is necessary for the vibrations to harmonize with the particular nature of the medium in the world, to be adjusted according to their magnetic fields. Around our world, there are many fields of influence, extending from density to fluidity. They surround the world almost like concentric circles. Each is a field of influence belonging to the beings in duty. The densest region of influence is the region which is closest to the surface of the world. And this belongs to rather backward beings. Nevertheless, these regions should not be considered concentric, by subjecting these to the spatial world. Here, we remind you of the example we previously gave about the functions in the hydrogen mass. So, there are milieux of influence around the world, starting from the dense and extending away to the subtle. Any influence to descend from a higher than planetary source to a man in the world, is in a different subtlety in ratio to the structure of that man. In this state, there is no sympathy between them. Therefore, that influence cannot descend to that man as it is. It is necessary for it to soften, to discard some part of its intensity, to become acceptable and digestible for mankind until it reaches that man. Because of this, it needs go through some transformations, be filtered through some filters, to become cruder. And these are done in the milieus we have just mentioned. So, each field of influence that will ensure this is a transformation station, that is, a transformer for the incoming influence. The farther the being that will send influence to a man is from that man, That is, the greater the difference is in evolution between them, the more the numbers of the transformative fields or transformer stations that influence will go through, until it reaches where that man is. On the other hand, the closer the being that will send influence and the man, that is the medium, that will receive that influence are, in regard the fluidity, the smaller the numbers of transformer stations in between are. More or less evolved beings that are closest to the world can make connection with some mediums they can contact, without going through transformer stations directly. This is because magnetic fields of these are close enough to be able to contact each other without transforming. For example, when some people need to go under the possession of these kinds of simple beings, because they need to be tried and tested, then beings in duty stick such simple beings to those people. In this way, obsessions occur and the simple being who is the obsessor can send its influences to that man directly, without needing the way stations. Actually, such simple beings or obsessors do not have the power to be able to use some transformers. For, this is an issue of evolution as well. Their comprehension is not suitable for this. They automatically stick to suitable people they encounter. Sometimes, these obsessors may be a crude milieu of transformation which is very close to the world, and are used as a station by higher beings. First of all, we will explain the communication mechanism constituting the most sublime form of mediumship, which is of a sublime being in duty with a medium in duty. An influence, departing from the being in duty and consisting of vibrations that can evoke certain meanings and impressions in the medium, starts to advance towards the medium chosen for this deed. As we have said, after going through a great number of transformer stations, it communicates with the higher consciousness of the being of that medium. After all, we had previously mentioned that only higher consciousness fields of the beings with other beings and with their spirits are open and they may contact this field. These influences landing at higher consciousness are immediately sent via the channel of unconscious to the medium's center governing the function or capability which is needed to be utilized. It is a rule that influences arriving in the brain increase the motions of molecules constituting the brain centers. They increase their accustomed frequency of vibrations, which means that their capabilities and powers increase accordingly. For example, if here the medium needs to convey the incoming vibrations to surroundings by speaking, then influences in the higher consciousness immediately arrive at the centers related to speaking via the channel of unconscious and activate them. These influences are adjusted in accordance with the impressions to be evoked in them. Since every influence entering the brain must be reflected directly, or via other ways surely to the consciousness center, during the coming of influence from the higher consciousness to the speaking center, this influence passes to the consciousness center as well. Influences passing to the consciousness lead this center to activity, according to the purposes inherent in these influences, by increasing the vibrational frequencies of molecules in the center expressing the consciousness. Consciousness receiving influences in this way sends them back to the higher consciousness, via the channel of unconscious. Here, the purpose of sending the influences to the higher consciousness is to inspect if they arrived exactly at the center or not. Being inspects this. Actually, inspection is done by the being in duty, but it appears as if this is done by the being of the medium. In consequence of the inspection, after the state of the influence entering the center of speaking is judged as correct or wrong, this judgment again comes to the consciousness, via the channel of the unconscious. Consciousness commands the center under its governance to do or not to do it, in accordance with the correctness or wrongness of the judgment. And the center acts only after receiving this command, and if it has received the command to do it, it makes the medium speak by influencing the required organs. At that time, as the medium translates the meanings contained in the incoming influence into words, takes necessary words and images from the knowledge and impressions belonging to that life in the unconscious. It is not necessary to involve the subconscious for this immediately. However, if it is necessary to take some impressions from the past lives, according to the quality of the communiqué to be given, then the center for speaking, via the channel of unconscious, again takes this knowledge from the materials in the subconscious. Since the influence cannot be spoken, unless it again goes through the inspection of the being, after it arrived at the center for speaking from the higher consciousness, this center should not act before the result of the inspection. Although the center for speaking appears as if it waits for it, actually here there is no waiting. This is because the completion of the necessary applications for the influences passing from the center for speaking to organs for speaking takes a few seconds, whereas the influences going from the consciousness to the higher consciousness, via the channel of unconscious, and going through the inspection, and then going back to the consciousness via the channel of subconscious and, from there, the commands going to the center for speaking, is completed in milliseconds of time. Therefore, the center for speaking does not need to wait for the result of the inspection for a long time. 4. At the time the influence is arriving just at the center for speaking, its inspection has been done and completed by the ways we mentioned above. As is seen in this mechanism, there is not much difference between the mechanism of dreams seen by the sublime influences we have just explained, and the mechanism of such sublime communications. However, the difference is the process here is more vivid and has gone through the inspection mechanism. Here, the being who gives the communiqué, as we have said above, can also use, if necessary, the materials in the subconscious, by appealing to it. These materials in the subconscious, as translated into words in the related center, begin to be spoken by the medium. The impressions belonging to them may not be evoked in the consciousness. These impressions, because they belong to past lives, actually do not exist in the consciousness. As advancing towards related centers via the channel of unconscious and coming by the consciousness, if they continue without activating the cells of comprehension there, comprehension of the consciousness center pertaining to the impressions of these, does not wake up and man does not know them. In this case, this is automatic transfer. In the inspected communication, there may be communiqués whose meanings do not need to be reflected to the comprehension of the medium, for various reasons. Although these communiqués are reflected from the consciousness center to the higher consciousness to be inspected as well, comprehension does not occur in the consciousness, and this happens in this way. The consciousness center is very complicated. It is constituted by molecules combined with atom combinations that have various frequencies. Some parts of these molecule groups are particular to the comprehension, and other parts do not pertain to the comprehension of man, but only to the governing vibrations of the consciousness center over other centers, that is, to its vibrations activating them. And in the deeds the consciousness having the centers to do, if comprehension belonging to these deeds is not required to occur in the medium, then the frequency of incoming influences to the consciousness center does not have the quality to alert the parts of consciousness pertaining to the comprehension, but a quality to alert the molecules pertaining to administrative deeds. Then, the consciousness center acts in a way to have the related centers activated, in accordance only with the meanings of vibrations arriving at the related centers, but because the comprehension center is not active, that man cannot have the comprehension of that deed. And in this case, automatic communiqué and automatic activity are in question. If all the groups of comprehension molecules in the consciousness center are activated, then consciousness both renders the act of governance, and man, naturally, becomes aware of what he does. In this case, the aware communications are in question. In controlled communications, if the being giving the communiqué does not want to reflect the meaning of the communiqué to human comprehension, It then sends vibrations in such quality and value that these cannot be in a state to activate the molecules groups of comprehension in the consciousness center. They only activate the molecule groups of the consciousness center, and ensure the constitution of the meanings belonging to the communiqués given through it at those centers. In the meantime, as the consciousness center gives this command to the centers, the comprehension in the state of human is not aware of these deeds. 4. Molecules belonging to that part of the center are not in activity. However, the governing molecules of the consciousness bear upon the meanings of those vibrations, which are reflected to the center and sent up for inspection. So, in this way, a non-comprehending control has been established via the channel we mentioned above. Therefore, the difference between the comprehending and non-comprehending controls is, in the case with the former, impressions activate the comprehension molecule groups in the consciousness, and with the latter, they do not alert these groups.